Well, welcome to episode 135 of the Family Answer podcast, where today we're talking about the principles that are needed to make marriage last from a biblical worldview. I'm your host, David Orgis, and I'm here with Dr. Mark Crosby. He is our resident expert here on the Family Answer He is a pastor. He is a mental health professional. He is an educator, and of course, he's the expert here on the Family Answer Now, Family Answer is not a therapy session. We're not able to give specific advice to your unique circumstances. So for in-depth questions, we encourage you to seek professional counsel for those unique circumstances. Before we jump in today, if you would hit the notification bell so that you never miss an episode of the Family Answer that would be fantastic. And if you're listening on our podcast and you're listening via audio, if you would rate and review our show on your favorite podcast app, that helps us out a lot. And as always, you can help the show grow just by inviting your family and your friends to join you on this journey of having stronger, healthier, happier families. Dr. Mark, good to be here with you today. We got I think a good question in store. One that I think if people haven't asked it out loud, I think we've all asked it in our heart or in our mind before and thought about the idea that we're talking about with what principles are needed to make marriage last. Do you feel like these are principles that are common sense, fairly well known, or are these principles that we really need to dig down and really invest ourselves in finding what are these answers to these principles?
I think yes to both questions.
Okay, there you go.
I think what's going on is that whenever we get married, whenever a couple gets married, everybody wants to believe and we desire, we hope and dream that this marriage will be forever and always,
right.
Live happily ever after, as they say. But the problem is that when we get into marriage, if we do not know what we're doing, if we do not know the principles that make marriage work, then we will automatically, by default in many ways, deny them or defy them because we don't know basically what they are. Okay. So it's kind of like, let's suppose you get a brand new car. Your grandfather gives you a car for graduation, brand new car, but you have never read the owner's manual. You don't know how to do anything with a car. Your dad, your granddad, whomever never showed you how to keep a car up, what to do with your car, how often you should change the oil, how often should you rotate the tires, whatever it may be, to maintain your car. And so if you don't do that, then what's going to happen is your car is going to break down.
Right.
You love your car. You're proud of your car. You love driving your car. But eventually, if you don't change the oil every 3,000 or 4,000 miles, if you don't rotate your tires, if you don't do the general maintenance to keep your car going, it's going to break down on you and leave you on the side of the road.
Yeah.
And so what happens is that if you know what to do, if you know how to change the oil, if you know how to rotate the tires and do those things that are important to maintaining your car, it'll last you, many, many years and many thousands of miles. A little sidebar, I had a relative who did not change the oil in his car for 8 years.
Oh, no way. That is wild.
And finally the car broke down on him, okay?
Yes, it did.
Because he didn't change the oil in this car for 8 years.
By the way, if you don't know, that is well past the maintenance schedule.
That is well past. and he was a little bit surprised as to why his car broke down on it. The problem is that if you don't maintain your marriage, if you don't do things that maintain your marriage, if you don't know the do's and don'ts, if you will, of the marriage, if you know the principles that make your marriage, long lasting and enduring, then it too will break down. And I think that's what goes on in so many couples. At least 50% of the couples who get married, they just don't know what to do to maintain their marriage. And eventually it breaks down because your marriage, as we'll talk about in a moment, is a system. It has principles that make it work. If you deny those principles or defy those principles over time, eventually it breaks down.
So just like with a car, if we deny and defy the principles of marriage, our marriages will break down.
Absolutely.
Well, if you want to have your question answered here on the Family Answer we would love to do that for you. You can email us. It's familyanswerman@liveoak.church. Familyanswerman@liveoak.church is our email address, and it's a great way to get your questions read on air. And the question that we have today reads this. It says, my parents divorced after being married for 45 years. I got married 2 years ago, and I have a child on the way due in April. I'm worried that my marriage won't last. How does one have a marriage that lasts until, quote, death do us part?
Okay, so for the next 30 minutes, I hope people will pay attention, and pastors who are listening, I pray you can use this for maybe some of your sermons. There's hopefully some good points you can use and share with your congregation as well. So we want to equip the pastors, and we want to equip those who are driving today, those who are having a wonderful marriage, and those whose marriage is struggling. So the question is, how do you make a marriage last? Well, as we said a moment ago, every system has principles that make it work.
Right.
And if those principles are denied or defied, then the system will break down. That's true of anything. Again, whether it be your car, your marriage, your health. So marriage is a system.
Okay.
Meaning this, it has principles that make it work. It has parts that must coordinate and cooperate with each other in order for the marriage to work. And so if you're not aware of these, if you're not aware of these principles, if you're not aware of the parts that are, again, involved, then it's going to struggle. It's going to break down. So here's the question. What are the principles of marriage? Or put another way, what are some of the do's and don'ts that some never learn? And so for the next 25 minutes or so, I want to share some of the do's and don'ts of marriage. Because if they're applied, it can keep the system running. If they're applied, it can keep things going well. If they're applied, you can have a healthy, happy marriage. So again, the things we do and the things we should avoid are equally important. So again, once again, the do's and don'ts of marriage. And by the way, for those who want to keep count, for the pastors who are listening, who like a good list, here are the 10 do's and don'ts that can keep your marriage strong and healthy. Again, the do's, real quickly, there's 10 of them. The do's. Number one, marriage requires knowledge. Again, we've said that time and time again, but marriage requires knowledge. But the problem is that very few couples, even those who've been married 15 to 20 years, 25 years, whatever, they rarely ever read any books about marriage.
Right.
They rarely ever learn. They rarely go to marriage conferences. So they rarely gain knowledge about marriage and their role in it. And unfortunately, what happens is they will use whatever model they had growing up, good or bad. They will use whatever criteria they think, they need to use, good or bad. And so they don't know or have the knowledge to be married. In other words, they don't know the general needs of your spouse. If you don't know the general needs of your spouse, for example, women, they need to feel valued. They need to have meaningful communication. They need to have meaningful romance. And they need to be held and hugged, 3 or 4 times a day. That's just a basic need of a woman. Men, they need attention. They need affection. They need appreciation. They need acknowledgement. And when men have that, and when women have that, you're meeting the general need. But also, what are the particular needs of your spouse? Right. You may be married to a person who's a morning person. Okay, they may need you to get up with them. Okay, if you may be married to someone who's not a morning person, they need you to be quiet when you get up in the morning or whatever. But what are the particular needs? What are their likes and dislikes? If your husband doesn't like peas, don't give him peas, with his, potatoes kind of thing. But know their likes and dislikes. Know their love language. Now, we've said that many, many times on this program. Everybody has their love language. For some, it may be spend time with me. For some, I want special gifts, special days, anniversaries, birthdays, holidays. For some, it's acts of service. Do things for me. If I'm, away, I would love it when I come in and the house looks clean or whatever it may be. Words of affirmation, tell me what you think, share with me your thoughts, give me, compliments, whatever. And then of course, for many people and for most men, it's affection. These are love languages that we all need to have our spouse speak to us. And if we don't know it, and this is the point, if we don't have the knowledge of what it means to be married, to meet the needs of our spouse, to know their love language, things are going to break down.
So you need to know the general principles of marriage as well as the specifics of your spouse.
Exactly. Knowledge is crucial. And again, knowing basically what your spouse wants, needs, what men want, what women want, et cetera. And there's books about this. There's hundreds of books on this subject. And sometimes it's as simple as just getting a book and reading it, or getting, a book on, a CD or whatever it may be, or a podcast, whatever it may be, and just listening to what is being said. Number 2, be willing to make adjustments. Be willing to make adjustments. If your spouse needs you to help them. If they say, hey, I need help around the house, I need help with the kids, don't be the guy who says, well, that's woman's work, or that's just, my mom was able to handle all that. No, make the adjustment. If your spouse needs something, make the change, be willing to start or stop, whatever it may be that is bothering your spouse. Adjustments are crucial. If you're a spender and your spouse says, hey, look, we need to slow down the spending, be willing to make that adjustment. If it's spiritual growth, if it's home management, if it's intimacy, whatever it may be, but listen to your spouse and be willing to make the adjustment. It's when you consistently push back. It's when you consistently don't do what they're asking for. When you're consistently ignoring, their desires, their hopes, their dreams, their beliefs, their requests, then again, there's going to be a problem. Number 3, do make them a priority. We've talked about that before. Marriage only works when it's in first place.
Yeah.
If your kids are the priority, you're going to have a problem. If your hobby is a priority, you're going to have a problem. If your job is a priority, you're going to have a problem. Meaning simply this: yes, we have to work. Yes, we have to raise our kids. Yes, we like to do fun things, but never at the expense of our spouse.
Yeah, I like that you've used that phrase a lot, that marriage only works if it's in first place.
Right. So priority is very, very important. Number 4, if you're keeping count, do have your guardrails. Guardrails, again, prevent so many problems within the relationship, but primarily guardrails prevent what could evolve into an affair.
Okay.
When you're staying, late after work with someone of the opposite gender, just the two of you. If you go on a trip with someone of the opposite gender, just the two of you. If you have coffee at every break with someone of the opposite, just the two of you. If the person says, hey, let's just go do lunch, got to have lunch. Lunch is not a problem. Why don't we go to this neat little cafe around the corner and we can bring our work with us, and so we can work over lunch. Why don't we just do that? These are all areas and invitations and open doors, if you will, for further problems.
Yeah.
And so if you don't have guardrails that says, you know what, I'm not going on a business trip, I'm not having lunch, I don't do coffee with someone of the opposite gender, just the two of us. If you don't have those guardrails, then the reality is you're opening yourself up for possibility of affairs. And many will tell you affairs began, quote unquote, very innocently. It was just lunch. It was just coffee. It was just a trip. It was just fill in the blank. And before you knew it, you found yourself being romantically connected and involved.
Which is why guardrails are so important and valuable, is because they're set before the edge, before the catastrophe.
Exactly. You say to your spouse, you say to yourself, you say, y'all make basically a promise to each other. These are our guardrails. These are the things we're not going to do.
And that's so great that you're talking about having those conversations with your spouse so that you both agree on those guardrails.
Yeah, and because again, there's going to be moments, maybe in your business, maybe, in certain settings where you're going to be, asked to do something with someone of the opposite gender that seems innocent. Right. Hey, I want the two of you to be on this project. I want the two of you to go take care of this assignment. I want the two of you to go. And again, it's business. It's work, it's whatever. But the reality is that if you don't have guardrails that says, okay, we're going to have to make some arrangements because these are my guardrails. These are my personal beliefs. These are my restrictions. These are things that my wife and I, my husband and I have promised each other that we're not going to do. And again, are there going to be moments where it's absolutely impossible? Possibly. But generally speaking, having these guardrails is so very important. Next, have the thing that y'all enjoy doing together. Do have something that y'all enjoy doing together. For some couples, and we said this before, maybe it's camping, maybe it's boating, maybe it's taking long walks, maybe it's watching, binge watching, movies or, series that you find interesting in them, just the two of you. You turn out all the lights, get some popcorn, put the TV on, put the kids to bed, and just, have this moment where this is something we enjoy doing. I think one of the great things that we did, when we were dating or those first few weeks or months of marriage is we did something together. We had something we enjoyed, but over time you lose that. Yeah. And so it's important that you have that thing that you do, whether it be once a month, once a week, once a quarter, but hopefully more frequently than once every 2 or 3 months, but something that you do.
And is that best to keep, if you have your thing as a couple, is that best to keep that just your thing and not then saying, hey, I love to do this X, whatever activity it is, to then just say, hey, I'm just going to do this with you, and I'm not going to go do this with even my buddies.
Absolutely. Because again, that's why it's called your thing. It's something that y'all do together. It's something that y'all share. Again, if you love that long walk, every night, if you love that, that Friday night, dinner night, date night, where we're going to go to a new restaurant every Friday night somewhere, if it's 5 miles away, if it's, 25 miles away. But you do that and you look forward to it and you look at the reviews and you look at the menus. And if that's your thing, okay. But whatever it may be, but you have the thing that you do as a couple. And by doing that, you look forward to it, you talk about it, and it keeps the interest, it keeps the involvement of your romantic life and your social life, intact, which is very important. Number 6, do serve and submit to one another. We don't like that word serve or submit, but it's throughout the Bible. And Ephesians 5:21 says, how important it is that we submit to one another, that we serve one another.
Yeah.
And by doing that, we are saying to our spouse, I'm here for you. By the way, the moment you signed up to get married, the moment you signed the dotted line, what you signed up for, whether you were told this or not, was to be a servant.
Yeah.
You signed up to serve her. You signed up to serve him. And when there's mutual submission and there's mutual service, life is great. The marriage is great. Things come together because who doesn't want to be served?
Yeah.
And so when you're serving your wife, and you're doing things that are important to her, or when you're serving your husband and doing things important to him, and there's that mutual service, then that love tank, if you will, that emotional love tank that we all have begins to stay full. But when you're not being served, or when you're doing all the serving, then what happens is your emotional love tank, gets dry, gets empty. So serving and submitting. Number 7, if you're keeping count, do ask for the thoughts and opinions of the other. As opposed to asking your husband or your wife, why did you do that? Why did you do that? Or, why did you spend that money? Why did you go there? Why did you bring the kids there?
Why is a very accusatory word.
It really
puts us on our
is.
defensive.
It really is, because it automatically puts you on the defensive. But when you ask for the thoughts or the opinion, of the other person, tell me what you think about this. Give me your thoughts. I'd like to know your opinion on fill in the blank. That opens the door for conversation as opposed to defensiveness. So, and this is especially true, I think, for men, when their wife says to them, why'd you do that? Again, it puts them on the defensive. It makes them feel inadequate. But if the wife says, hey, look, give me your thoughts. Tell me what's going on. Tell me, how this works. Give me your opinion on what you think, we should do. And that's a big difference than the why question.
So essentially you have to have a no why policy if you want to know why.
Exactly. Number 8, do compliment. I think after we get married, we forget how important compliments are. How nice, the person looks, or how beautiful their hair may be, or, how handsome, or how considerate, or whatever it is they've done. Do compliment. Sometimes we take for granted that, hey, they're just supposed to look nice. They're just supposed to be there for us. They're just supposed to. And so when that happens, no one wants to be taken for granted. And so when you are complimented, it's so important, because here's the thing. Someone may compliment you. And if it's not your spouse, what begins to happen is you start automatically saying things, doing things, looking in a certain way to get that compliment from whoever's complimenting you.
Right.
And so wives, compliment your husbands. Husbands, compliment your wives. You be the first to compliment them.
Yeah.
Number 9, do cooperate and be considerate. Sometimes we're not cooperative. Sometimes we're not considerate. Sometimes you do things, and we didn't think about her. We didn't think about him. For example, if you're going to be late, call. There's no excuse not to call if you're going to be late. Text, whatever.
Right.
Don't keep them guessing, but do cooperate and do be considerate. And so, again, how powerful and important that is. And number 10, do pursue them. do pursue your spouse. Everybody wants to be pursued. When you were dating, you were being pursued. You were pursuing and being pursued. So do pursue your spouse. We forget doing that because once the marriage or the wedding, I should say, has completed and the rice has been thrown and the vows have been said, for some reason we stop the pursuit. But pursuing is something we all want and all need from our spouse.
So those are the do's.
Those are the do's, or the 10 do's.
All right.
Equally important or the 10 don'ts. So if you've just tuned in, we've got about 10 minutes left of our program. If you've just tuned in, we're talking about the do's and don'ts of a marriage, or the principles of a marriage that make a marriage last. So those are the do's. If you've just tuned in, here are some don'ts that are equally important. We've got about 10 minutes left, so let's fire away.
Let's go.
The don'ts of marriage are these. Number one, don't let the sun go down on your anger. The book of Ephesians chapter 4 talks about this. Don't let the sun go down on your anger. And why that's so important is that the Apostle Paul, under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, knew this much, that anger takes control of a person. Anger takes control of a person. And here's the one thing that, again, from a psychological perspective, we all know, and that is humanity, or human beings, people want to be in control of themselves.
Yeah.
They want to control who they are, where they're going, what they're doing. They want to be in control. And so what happens is that anger, when it initially comes into your psyche, if you will, takes control of you. And then you say things, you do things, you believe things, you think things that you normally wouldn't do. So what the Bible is saying here is don't let the sun go down on your anger. In other words, do something about your anger. If that means taking a long walk, if that means taking a hot bath, if that means punching the punching bag, whatever that may be, right. But you begin to figure out how to let the sun, or how to keep the sun from going down on your anger, so that you can work it out, work through it, so it doesn't accumulate inside of you.
Right, and we've all experienced that, where you went to bed mad, you went to bed angry, and then you wake up angry, and it's a new day, and the Lord's mercies are new each day.
Right.
But sometimes our bitterness becomes rooted.
That's exactly what happens. When you stay angry, when that anger is never resolved, then bitterness becomes the outcome of that. It's the fruit, if you will, of the root of anger. Number two, don't allow yourself to get connected to someone else. And so many times that happens, and for the pastors who are listening, we've all heard the story of pastors getting involved maybe with the choir director, the secretary, whomever, because what happens is they're together 6, 7, 8 hours a day. They're very cooperative and considerate of one another. They see the best of each other each day. Right. And what begins to happen is you start becoming connected to that person. That's true maybe in other places of business where there's that sense of connection with your coworker, whoever it may be, but don't allow yourself to get connected to someone else. Beware of the warning signs, beware of that happening, and don't allow that to happen. Number three, don't let criticism and contempt be a part of your marriage. We talked about the importance of complimenting. Don't criticize and contempt, and bring contempt into your marriage, because when you're critical of your spouse, how they are dressed, or what they are doing, or their work, or their appearance, or whatever it may be, when you're critical, when that critical is harsh, and when that critical is demeaning, and when that criticism is demoralizing, that's when things begin to create a rift or separation between you and your spouse.
Do you think it's just as dangerous to have that external criticism and contempt as it is to have those thoughts in your mind and ruminate on those thoughts?
Because eventually thoughts become words and words become actions. So again, eventually it's going to happen. And as we said before, the only thing that keeps a thought from turning into an action is opportunity.
Wow.
And so when you're angry, that's the opportunity for some people to start saying what they're thinking. And that's very powerful and very important to know. So if you're just tuning in, we're talking about things that you should not be doing in your marriage, things that are very destructive to your marriage. And if you don't do these things, hopefully your marriage will last a good long time, till death do us part, hopefully. Don't let an addiction get in your marriage. So many times couples have allowed addictions to come into their marriage. They don't mean to, but they start drinking more excessively. By the way, my personal belief, and I say this to my clients, is that, marriage and alcohol, family and alcohol never mix. So again, the best way to keep Alcoholism from coming into your family, coming to your marriage is not habit at all.
What's taking away the opportunity?
Exactly. You just don't go there. Don't have, it's South Louisiana. It's South Louisiana. I don't care. I don't care where we are. The reality is still the same. Alcohol and families don't mix. Don't let an addiction get into your marriage. And it's easy to do. Again, other things that happen, pain medication, or other prescription medications, if you will, that sometimes can be abused and addictions can begin to occur. Again, take your medication as prescribed by your physician, absolutely. But beware of over-medicating. Beware of taking more than what the doctor prescribes. Beware of realizing that you're becoming now dependent and doing more than the doctor is prescribing. So don't let addiction get in your marriage. Number 5, don't be defensive or stonewall. Sometimes when we hear things, we become very defensive. For men, in many cases, they stonewall. They basically tune their wife out. They ignore their wife. They don't look at their wife. They don't speak to their wife. They can go maybe, hours or even days without connecting to their wife. And so beware of being stonewalling. Beware of being defensive. If someone says something to you, it's your natural knee-jerk reaction. I get this. To want to be defensive. But if you listen to what they're saying, if you listen to where they are and begin to make that adjustment that we talked about earlier, things will go a whole lot better for you. So beware of being defensive and beware of stonewalling. Number 6, don't expect them to take your box of hopes, dreams, and desires.
Oh, don't expect them to take your box of hopes, dreams, and desires.
Okay, so what happens is this. Every couple who comes into marriage has their little box. And in that box, these are my hopes, these are my dreams, and these are my desires. These are my expectations. This is what I expect you to wear each night. This is how much money I expect you to make. This is how many kids I expect us to have. This is where I think we're going to live. These are the places we're going to vacation. And what happens is if you give that person your box and they don't fulfill it, they feel like a failure and you feel like I married the wrong person.
Wow.
And so don't expect them to take your box of hopes, dreams, and desires. However, take theirs. In other words, don't let them give it, but you take their box, if you will, and say, this is what I hope to do. This is what I would like to do because I'm here to serve you and make your life a better life.
Yeah, it goes back to number 6 of the do's, serve and submit.
Exactly. And if they do not live up to the expectations, number 7, don't focus on their failures if they do not take your box. Okay, if they do take your box, I should say. Don't focus on their failures. Don't focus on, hey, they're not making the money. They're not, she's not able to have the children, whatever, or the number of children that don't focus on their failures and do not, let those failures be a wedge between the two of you. Number 8, don't stop forgiving. I tell couples all the time that forgiveness is the oil to your marriage. Forgiveness is the very thing that keeps the friction and the problems and all of this, at bay. Don't stop forgiving your spouse. Again, forgive them quietly, personally, but also forgive them, verbally and corporately. Let them know, I forgive you. Seek their forgiveness also. Seeking forgiveness, being forgiving, is crucial to any marriage. Don't stop forgiving.
Yeah, normalizing the word forgive in your family is a game changer.
Yeah, exactly. And what you're saying is, I'm not going to hold this against you. I'm not going to make you don't owe me anything. So again, forgiveness is so important. It may take a while to do that. Sometimes forgiveness is a process. Sometimes it can be done instantly, depending upon the depth of the problem.
Right.
So excuse me, forgiving is powerful. Don't stop forgiving. Number 9, don't stop praying and praising together. Along those same lines, don't stop planning and preparing. You should be planning, what you hope, to happen in 2025. You should be preparing for maybe that vacation. You should be preparing for that new addition to the home, whatever it may be. But don't stop praying together, praising together. Don't stop planning together. Don't stop preparing together. And last of all, don't blame them for your behavior. So many times the husband will blame the wife or the wife will blame the husband for their behavior. No, you're in charge of you. You're in control of you. The choices you make are your choices. I understand, the reaction. I understand, the appetites. I understand those things. But again, there are healthier ways to deal with the concerns and the problems of the relationship. The point is this. When all else fails, and if you see the warning lights of your marriage, get the help you need, get the intervention you need, and do remember that your marriage can be for better or for best.
There you go. And now you've heard it from the Family Answer Man, the 10 do's and the 10 don'ts of making sure that we keep the principles needed to make our marriage last first and foremost in our lives. We hope that this episode of the Family Answer Man, as always, has inspired you to make changes that will lead to a stronger, healthier, happier family.